You ever wonder why some people can recall entire books, powerful ideas, and strategies that transform their lives, while others read and forget within hours? It's not about intelligence. It's about strategy. It's about how you engage with what you read, how you make it stick, and how you turn knowledge into power. If you want to remember everything you read, you've got to approach it differently than 99% of people, because let's be real, reading without retention is just entertainment, and entertainment doesn't change your life. 1, read with intensity and purpose. Most people read like zombies. They stare at the words, flip the pages, and hope something sticks. That's not how mastery works. When you read, read with purpose. Before you even open a book, ask yourself, why am I reading this? What am I looking for? Take notes, highlight key insights, engage with the material like your future depends on it, because it does. A book can change your life if you absorb its lessons and apply them. 2, apply the rule of immediate implementation. Your brain doesn't retain information it doesn't use. You read something powerful, apply it today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. If you're reading about leadership, lead differently in your next conversation. If you're reading about confidence, change your posture, your tone, your presence immediately. When you take action, your brain locks in the lesson. You're no longer just reading, you're becoming. 3, teach to retain. You want to remember something forever? Teach it. Share it with a friend. Explain it to a family member. Post about it. When you teach, you're forced to simplify, clarify, and internalize the information. The best learners in the world are the best teachers. It's not a coincidence. 4, connect emotion to information. Your brain remembers emotion. That's why you remember the best days of your life, the worst days of your life, but you can't recall what you had for lunch last Tuesday. When you read something that inspires you, pause. Let it sink in. Imagine how your life will change if you apply it. Feel the impact of that lesson. If you feel it, you'll remember it. If you remember it, you'll use it, and if you use it, you'll grow. At the end of the day, reading is only powerful if it transforms you. Don't just consume information, own it, live it, make it part of who you are. Because when you remember everything you read, you have an unfair advantage in life. Now go, read with intensity, take action, teach what you learn, and never ever stop growing. Sure, here's an expanded version of the first keynote, read with intensity and purpose, in a 650-word speech format with a Tony Robbins-style delivery. You ever wonder why some people can pick up a book, read it once, and then recall every major insight like it's second nature? Meanwhile, others read the same book, flip through the pages, get to the end, and remember almost nothing? It's not about IQ. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how you engage with the material. Most people read the way they've been conditioned, passively. They scan words, flip pages, and hope something sticks. That's not how the brain works. Your mind is a machine built for survival, not storage. If you don't train it to retain information with intensity, purpose, and strategy, it will discard what you read faster than you realize. Because here's the truth. If you're reading without a purpose, you're wasting your time. Before you even crack open a book, you've got to set your intention. Why are you reading it? What are you looking to gain? What's the outcome you want from this? If you don't go in with a purpose, your brain doesn't know what to latch onto. And when there's no purpose, there's no retention. Think about it. If I handed you a book on physics right now and said, here, read this, but you had no real interest in physics, how much would you retain? Probably nothing. But if I told you that everything you read in that book could make you $1 million in the next year, you'd hang on to every single word. That's the power of purpose. So when you sit down with a book, don't just read, engage. Approach it like it holds the key to transforming your life, because it just might. The first step, prime your brain before you read. Skim through the book. Look at the chapter titles. Get a feel for what's coming. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I want to walk away with when I'm done with this? That one question alone shifts your brain from passive mode to active mode. Now, once you start reading, don't just let your eyes move across the words. Attack the page. Highlight, underline, take notes, write in the margins. When you physically engage with the material, your brain tells itself, this is important, store this. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to be neat when they read. They don't want to mark up their books. They don't want to write in them. But let me ask you this. What's the goal? Is it to keep your book in perfect condition, or is it to make sure the knowledge inside becomes part of who you are? Because let's be clear, reading isn't about finishing books. It's about transforming the way you think, the way you act, the way you live. So don't be afraid to make the book your battlefield. Your mind is fighting for mastery, and every note, every underline, every question you write in the margins is a weapon that helps you win. And let's talk about energy. Your energy when you read matters more than you think. If you're slouched on the couch, half asleep, scrolling your phone between pages, your brain is in shutdown mode. You're not learning, you're just going through the motions. But if you sit up, take deep breaths, and read with intensity, something changes. You start to absorb the material, your brain fires up, your focus sharpens. This isn't some motivational gimmick. This is neuroscience. When you engage with high energy, your body tells your brain, this is important. Pay attention. And here's another game changer. Talk out loud while you read. Summarize what you just learned. Speak it like you're teaching it to someone. Because the more senses you involve, reading, writing, speaking, the more your brain locks in the information. At the end of the day, reading is not about how many books you get through. It's about how many books get through to you. If you want to remember everything you read, you've got to read with intensity, with hunger, with absolute focus. Don't just read, attack the knowledge. Make it yours. Here's an expanded version of the 2 keynotes. Most people think reading is enough. They believe that if they just go through the words on the page, they'll automatically remember what they read. But that's not how the brain works. Your mind is not a recording device. It's a machine that prioritizes what it thinks is useful. And what's the fastest way for your brain to discard information? Simple. Don't use it. If you don't apply what you read, your brain will decide it's not worth keeping. That's why most people forget 90% of what they read within days. It's not because they have bad memory. It's because they don't implement what they learn. If you want to retain information, you need to apply it immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. The moment you learn something new, find a way to put it into action. Let's say you're reading a book on communication skills. You learn a technique about how to listen more effectively. If you just think, that's a great tip, and move on, you'll forget it within hours. But if you take that knowledge and use it in your next conversation, suddenly it becomes real. Your brain recognizes it as important. Now it's not just theory, it's something you've experienced. Think about how you learned to ride a bike. You didn't read about it in a book and suddenly become a master cyclist. You got on the bike, you wobbled, you fell, you adjusted, and eventually your brain locked in the skill permanently. Learning from books works the same way. If you don't apply the knowledge, you'll never retain it. So every time you read something valuable, ask yourself, how can I use this right now, not later, right now? If you're reading about confidence, change your posture immediately. If you're reading about negotiation, use a technique in your next discussion. If you're reading about leadership, shift the way you interact with your team today. The faster you apply it, the deeper it gets wired into your mind. And here's the real key. Don't stop at just applying it once. Repetition is the mother of mastery. One time is not enough. If you want to make knowledge stick, you have to use it again and again. The more you use it, the stronger the connection in your brain becomes, until eventually it's not something you remember, it's something you are. Now, here's another way to make information stick forever. Teach it. You might think you really understand something, but the moment you try to explain it to someone else, you realize where the gaps are. Teaching forces clarity, it forces understanding, and it forces retention. Think about the best teachers you've ever had. They didn't just repeat information. They owned it. They could break it down, simplify it, and explain it in a way that made sense. That's because teaching something requires you to fully grasp it first. And when you do that, the information gets locked into your brain at a whole new level. So here's a challenge. Every time you learn something valuable, share it. Teach it to a friend, a family member, or even a stranger. It doesn't matter. If they're interested, what matters is that you're explaining it out loud. The more you teach, the deeper the knowledge becomes embedded in your brain. If you're reading about productivity, tell someone about the best technique you just learned. If you're reading about health, share a new insight with a friend. If you're reading about success, explain the key takeaway to someone else. When you do this, something powerful happens. You're no longer just absorbing knowledge, you're owning it. And here's the best part. When you teach, you also reinforce your own commitment. You don't want to be the person who shares great ideas but never follows through. The moment you teach something, you feel a sense of responsibility to live by it. You create an identity around the knowledge. And when something becomes part of your identity, you never forget it. So don't just read, apply what you learn instantly. Repeat it until it becomes part of who you are, and teach it to others so it gets locked in permanently. Because when you do that, you don't just remember what you read, you become it.